Nabnasset. 01861, okay? And beyond. And when we started this project, we said we were going to do beyond because we weren't sure how much we could add with Nabnasset, and then found out we had to kick a lot of stuff out that we really wanted to put in. Why 2 T's? Because sometimes you see it 1 T, sometimes you see it with 2, but most recently it's 1 T, okay? I'm going to go through the first half of this, which is going to run through basically the Brookside section of town. We're going to have a short intermission, and then I'm going to do the second half. So plan on it like that. If you have any questions or comments, please hold them, because we can do those during the intermission. Okay, T? Joseph DeRault lived on Plain Road. If you know where Marcel Lacombe is. Marcel here? Yeah, Marcel. Marcel Lacombe's house on Plain Road. And Joseph DeRault's family moved into that home and around 1906. When did you first come to Westford? 1906. We didn't call it Nabnasset. At the time, there was no Nabnasset. It was all Brookside, the Brookside section. There was no Nabnasset. Nabnasset became a section in about 1924 when they put a post office in at Brookside. Actually, the year was 1920, and the reason it came in 1920 because Abbott Westford insisted they have a post office. Because they already had one Brookside post office near Worcester, we couldn't have 2 Brooksides. Therefore, the name of the lake called it Nabnasset, and that's how the Nabnasset section became known as Nabnasset rather than Brookside. Okay. All right, this map is a 1730 map that you find on the inside of Reverend Hodgman's History of Westford. I've listed some of the families, but what I wanted to show you in this is that Adams family, Chandler's, Rumrell, Keyes family, I'm going to call it Keyes, I'll call it Keyes sometimes for those people who prefer it to be Keyes, but I've always called it Keyes family, but they moved in this because they came in from Chelmsford. Westford was part of Chelmsford. So the original settlers originally settled in this area. Why did they go from here out here? Well, actually, when Hodgman gave his address to the renovation of Town Hall in 1881, in his speech he explained that what they were doing was they were going out and finding meadows areas. So if you know where the Salt Box Farm is, down off of Hilder Street, why there? Because it was a meadow in that area. Why Bridge over at Bridges Pond? Because it was meadows area and they didn't have to clear the area. Okay? A few Fletchers over here, right? Butterfield. Okay. All right, early indications of Native American activity in the area. This is a aerial view of a site that was used by the Native Americans, a ceremonial site. If you want to know more about this, there is a display up at the 2nd floor of the Westford Museum that goes into this in great detail. But for our purpose, I just want to say it's evidence of Native American activity, as well as the next slide. This Indian artifacts were found on the Pauley Farm. The Pauley Farm was on Lowell Road. And it says a collection of Indian relics found at the farm of Amos Pauley in the Brookside section is shown here. It includes center an Indian arrowhead a few days ago, top primitive gauge, and a dugout canoe bottom. Okay, now all of these are at display also at the Westford Museum. But it shows early Indian activity. Well, I want to add the importance of the Stony Brook. The Stony Brook was a transportation area for the Indians. That's why you saw Indian activities in Forge, in the Graniteville area, and in the Nabnasset area as well. Okay. All right, Solomon Keyes house on Francis Hill, circa 1656, is said to be the first actual home in Westford. This is in 1656, but it's around the 1900, and that's what the house looks like today, Keyes Road. And as I could say, they were just over the line from Chelmsford. All right, now, in 1669, why did I jump right to a package store, you say? Well, there's reason for that. In 1922, the Gilsons of Graniteville built this store, okay? The Gilsons, and it was a market. As they were digging, they found evidence of the canal that was there, because one of the first mills, a sawmill that was built along right on this site. It later became, and some of us will remember, Stan's Package Store, the Kosowicz family that owned it for years, owned the brick house that's up on Plain Road. And today it's RK NAB Liquors. The first part of this is going to focus on the historic district. The historic district, okay, is Brookside Station down here, and this is where we know the condominiums are today. Brookside Road, up Moore Road, but when the Brookside Historic District was named a historic district and put on the National Register January 23rd, 2003, this is the area they took up. So, Coolidge, all of these areas outside of that are not actually part of the Nabnasset Historic District, just the Brookside area. William Chandler in 1724 buys a house, buys the land by the Stony Brook, and sets up a grist and flour mill and a sawmill. This is the Berto House, about 1941, but originally this is where the Chandler House was, and this is what it looks like today. But Chandler owned it, and he began to develop this area, the original mills at this site. After several years of business, he sells to the Adamses, who lived on Tingsboro Road. These houses, of course, they didn't look like that in the mid-1700s. But that was one of the original Adams houses. And this here was the barn. Both have been converted to permanent homes. Adams' name is very prominent in Chelmsford. The Adams Library, there were quarries that belonged to the Adamses as well. So most of their dealings were in Chelmsford. But we wanted to show you that this is the areas here in Chelmsford. If you went further down Tingsboro Road where the Stokopoulos live, Chandlers lived there. That house was built in 1730. Okay? All right. So it changes hands several times, and by 1857 it is owned by Davis and Kidder. And this hand-drawn map was put together with the bill of sale, and it was sold to Thomas Theodore Hamlin, who built a home at 9 Brookside Road. And once again, he's got a grist and flour mill there, and he's operating it, and he builds this. This house is still here today. If you go next to the Fletcher Club, it's the house right next to the Fletcher Club. Okay? The barn is no longer there, but the house itself is. Things really begin to change. Brookside Worsted founders George Moore and Seth Moore, okay, buy the area from Theodore Hamlet in 1862, and they convert it to a woolen worsted mill. That's Seth. He is a banker in Maine. George Moore is actually from Graniteville. He came down from Maine, but he lives in Graniteville. Okay, George Moore was also an inventor. This electric walking man machine, as diagrammed here, was on display at Madison Square Garden Motor Show, November of 1900. Shows another one of his patents. A tellurium shows you the sun and all the, how they rotate around the sun. So, well, he just put that in. He had a lot of patents, he really did, but these were a couple of the more prominent ones, rather than listing them all. George Moore and Seth were the ones that really begin to develop this area. The Moore homes. George Moore, when he moves to Brookside, builds this house, and if you probably noticed, that's Commodore Foods or the Food Locker or whatever it was, and he built this house here. This is his house in Graniteville. All right, if you look across from the mill pond in Graniteville, all right, this is where Chet Cook's house is. You move, the next one down is where Jane Hughes lives, and that's the one after that. He married a woman by the name of Philandra Richardson. The Richardsons owned a mill on that site where the original C.G. Sargent's is located, a little pulling area next to the mill pond, and that's where the original site, it burnt in 1858. But the Richardson family were business people in Graniteville. And so by marrying her, he probably came across some money and was wondering a good way to invest it. And so he and his brother purchased this. George Seymour, 1848 to 1923. George Seymour Jr. George Seymour, the first here, is the one who really does most of the development. This is where the Moore industries really take off, okay? This lithograph from 1894 shows Brookside, but if you go through North Chelmsford, Southwell Combing, and all of those others, Pappas Gulf, okay? But all of those are in this set, and they were all developed by the Moore family. In fact, when you see that they did in Nabnasset, that was kind of an outlet because most of their business was in Chelmsford. And these, I believe, were across also other industries that were part in Chelmsford as well. But it just shows you how, how wide their businesses were and how much land they owned. All right, residents of George Seymour in North Chelmsford. This is at 16 to 20 Wright Street. If you head up Princeton Boulevard, it's the second right, the one right after the church, and it's in there. This was his home. It's now, I think, apartments or condominiums. There's a picture of him, George Jr., and Harry Moore, the son of Seth Moore, in one of the early automobiles. William T. Johnson, Jr., who is the great-grandson of George R. Moore, is the one who contributed these pictures. He lives in Tennessee, and once again, Richie made contact with him to make sure, and he sent up the pictures. That's how extensively he did his research. All right, George Seymour Land and Building Holdings. Sanford Johnson, who did the work on declaring this a historic district, states that in 1915, Mr. Moore owned the entire water privilege along Stony Brook from North Chelmsford to Graniteville in Westford, which comprised 7 miles and 1,600 acres. He owned half of Forge Pond, Nabnasset Pond, and a great deal of additional land in Westford. Just to give you some kind of an idea, okay? This is the Westford Depot area. This is the depot over here, but all of these buildings on this side are owned by George C. Moore, okay? Somebody had said to me, well, I thought that was Burbeck's mill, and it was at one time, but not in 1900. It was earlier in the 1800s that Burbeck's had. Then you go over here, okay, and all the land from here all the way into Nabnasset in the Brookside area, okay, and these are the houses on Brookside Road, and you can see that's the Stony Brook, okay, and the railroad going along. But he owned all of that area as well. It gives you an idea. This is early 1900, the gristmill, the sawmills. Some of you have probably seen these pictures in some of the Westford booklets that have been out, historic booklets. Next one. Okay. Landholders of George C. Moore at the Nabnasset Lake area around 1900. All of the white area on this map, except for this land here, which was owned by the Abbotts. This land was owned by the Edwards, and this land was owned by the Edwards. This area here is where Edwards Beach was. They developed this into Edwards Beach. We're going to get into the Edwardses in a minute. Once again, here's the Edwards Beach area. This is Nabnasset Pond Farm. What was Nabnasset Pond Farm? Well, part of Nabnasset Pond Farm was the house next door that the McLaughlins live in today. And that was part, and it was, as they say, most of it was all farmland at one time. All right, Moore's Brookside Mill. Theodore Mill sells the flour mill to Seth and George Moore in 1863. These are insurance prints, and they show whatever buildings were there at the time. In 1990, well, the Moores convert the flour mill to wool mill and expand between 1863 and 1890. This would be George C. George R.'s son is the one who really takes the credit for this expansion and also the expansion in North Chelmsford. And this is what it looks like in the insurance print in 1890. Okay? Brookside Mill, the main brick building, which you see here, is built by William C. Edwards of Nabnasset, and this is what it looks like in 1906, and this is the insurance plant. So the Edwardses, they're the next big name. Who was William C. Edwards? Gordon Westford served 12 years in Troop F Cavalry. He was a Massachusetts volunteer militia. He served as a school committeeman, was best known as a builder and a contractor. While contracting, he also constructed along the Boston and Maine Railroad. He built many depots, including the depot on Causeway Street, okay, the old North Station, all right? And so he wasn't just known for this area. He was from Nabnasset, but it says, builders of Richardson Hall, Wilder Hall, Chandler Hall, Ridge House, West Chelmsford, Mass. Why? Because Nabnasset did not have a post office. Okay, that's why his mail was sent to West Chelmsford. He was the son of Moses Edwards. And this is a picture of the house in 1899, the Edwardses, and this is Moses Edwards, the father, and this is the Edwardses and family members. There must have been some kind of gathering. Mr. Edwards here is holding the dog at the end, William Edwards. That's his picture, okay? This is at Edwards Corner, okay, where the gas station, where Oak Hill Road crosses over to Brookside and Plain Road. And this is the house today in 2015, all right? This is a photo from 1899. And in front of it is Charles S. Edwards, who is the nephew of William C. Edwards. Charles S. Edwards was a son. He was a granite quarry worker, a teacher at the Nabnasset School, and a station master at the Brookside Depot. But more importantly, Rita Edwards Miller of Westford, Mass. was the granddaughter of Charles E. Edwards, okay? And the Rita Miller School in North Westford is named after her. So the Edwards family, she's a descendant of those. A couple of these homes. Okay, this is home today, but this is what the John Edwards home looked like in around 1900. The next photo shows you, as I said, they owned land along the pond. Here was the Edwards Camp near 59 Enmore Road. But let me look at it. See this, because of the way the land was, you can see a bridge here. He also built one of what's known as, I guess on the western edge of Nab Lake, is Shipley Swamp, okay? And it was used for, you know, his purposes, but it was also used for hiking, and you're gonna find out when Nabnasset Grove is established and Camp Nabnasset is established for the YMCA in the early 1900s, they probably used this bridge also for hiking. Next one, okay? William C. Edwards at Nabnasset Lake in his boat Louisa, I think we named after his wife, all right? This house may look familiar to today on Nabnasset Street. This was his drafting office, and most of the work was done in there. It's changed somewhat, but the outside, the architecture is still the same as it was in many ways as it was some 218 years ago. But that was his drafting office, where most of his work was done. Okay? Okay, building contractor, Town Hall, Rodenbush, or Westford Academy 2, 1897. J.V. Fletcher Library, 1896. Okay, and the four-room Sergeant School in 1869. Of course, they expanded it after that to make it 8 rooms. But William C. Edwards, the contractor, built all of those here in Westford. Okay? All right, turn our attention now to transportation. 2 particular modes of transportation I want to focus on. Not all of those roads you saw in that first picture, but first of all, the railroad. Okay? The Stony Brook Railroad, established in 1848, ran from Ayr to Lowell. And here's a This was taken from an envelope of A.C. Sargent's in Graniteville. Must have been just a way of decorating the envelopes. But you start over here, it's called Groton Junction. It's called because Groton Junction becomes the town of Air, I think in 1871. The railroad runs Forge Village, Graniteville, here, J.T. Moore, the Worsted Company, and then down into Chumpson and into Lowell. The reason these villages, Forge Village, Graniteville, and Nabnasset grew was a result of the railroad. Okay, similar to 495. And 495 was built in the late 50s and the early 60s. The population in Westford, Chelmsford, and other area communities just blew up because you had a means of mode of transportation. We could get back and forth to work. And that's when you began to see the mills in these areas like C.G. Sargent's, okay, and Abbott Worsted, which were dying industries at the time, moving south, and these people were now a different group of people that were coming into the area. Okay? This is the area here in Westford we're focused on. All right. Now, Brookside Depot, this is a photo of Brookside Depot. This is taken from, I think, the 250th booklet, I think, that Beth Shaw and Ellen Hardy put together. It said the Brookside Station on Stony Brook, completed in 1848, was a station for George C. Moore's Mills. It was later occupied by the Abbott Worsted Company. It says it's now Commodore Foods, so it's no longer Commodore Foods. It was connecting point for the H.E. Fletcher Company's Greater Quarry, and there were there were 8 railroad stations in town. And this picture here is a picture of the mill girls. Okay, probably got off the trolley over here, walking across the bridge, and there's the train going west, probably headed towards Graniteville and Forge Village. Okay, okay, Lowell and Fitchburg. This is the trolley line. And I want to read you a little bit about the trolleys in Westford. Westford had 3 railroad lines with 8 stations and 2 trolley lines in town. The trolley line, which opened in May of 31st, 1906, was an interurban line which ran from Air to North Chelmsford. The back section of the building at 2 Prescott Street, the little building behind the pizza place down there, okay, that was where the electrical equipment for the trolley, converting electricity from AC to DC for trolley use. Joseph Cornell was the caretaker of the power station. Not the same Joseph Cornell we remembered as chief, but I'm sure it was his grandfather, I believe. Yeah. It went along North Main Street, right down past, right along by the Mill Pond, down Beacon Street, over Nutting Road, where that little abutment is on Nutting Road. And then it came out on Route 40 and connected with the Boston and Northern Street Railway Company in North Chelmsford. So that was the main line. And then this spur line was built and opened a year later. This is West Chelmsford. This is Westford Corner. This is where the Willows would be today, okay? This is where Marshall's, the store was, and I'll show you that a little later. Here's Edwards Corner, but you can see it came in, went down Brookside Road, stopped here. You got off, you crossed the tracks, and got on to this spur line. It took you up the rest of Brookside Road, and then on to Lowell Road, up Cummings Road, and stopped in the center in front of the library. And if you've ever been in the Western Museum, there's a large picture of a trolley line, and that's the one that stopped in front. Okay, here's a picture of the trolley at 22 to 24 Brookside Road around 1912. This building is now gone, but this shows where it stopped. And the trolley, Brookside on the Mill Bridge, once again, and this was courtesy of the Burnham family as well. And they had gotten off the tracks, got on the other side, and headed up Cummings Road. And here's Brookside Crossing about 1903. This would be Moore Road, okay, Brookside Road, and you come over the crossing here. As this was before the trolley was built. But there's the Brookside Station. Okay? And there's the bridge. So, Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show, 1911. Buffalo Bill. Okay, famous, and these are a couple of advertisements. So why is he here? Next slide. Buffalo Bill's train wreck, May 24th, 1911, at the Brookside track spur to the Fletcher Quarry. The scene of the Wild West wreck near, and this is taken from the Boston Traveler, shows the train tipped over and the Indians camped out just as their native health after the train wreck. Now, some of you remember Teddy McLeod from the MacLeod Store. We went up and Teddy came down, and his mother was the postmistress in town for a lot of years. And he said that she said when the train wreck occurred, her grandmother had a store, and she went to that store. She was about 2 years old, and Buffalo Bill Cody, came in and saw her and said, "Oh, what a cute little girl," and gave her a little doll, one of those Kewpie dolls, I guess, from the circus. The Indians weren't allowed in, by the way. Okay, so that's why they were camped here. Okay, but claim to fame, 15 minutes of fame, here you go. All right, a couple of others. This is the Daniel Sheehan's, the other industries that we see in Nabnasset at the time. Actually, there's a longer description of the Sheehan Mill, and if you've gone down Lowell Road, before you get the Pellettier Fletcher House, or just after it, there is the in-way to go to the Daniel Sheehan's, and it was called a cider mill, but it was also a lumber mill. It was used for any number of things. And it went along the old, actually it was the old Salem Road is where this was built on. That would be the old Salem Road that people took and brought their goods to back in the 16s and 1700s. Now, Bob Oliphant, Bob, we chose to use this picture, okay? There's a second picture. There is a second picture that Bob said we should be using, and it just looks so much different from this one here, okay? So if anyone has an explanation, we were going to put them both up, and I said no. We're just going to put this one up. This is the one you see displayed when you go down and see it. When they have the explanation of what this is, okay? But this is one of the businesses in the area. Next one. Okay. At Whidden's Corner, Oak Hill Road, okay, Oak Hill Road and Route 40, okay, where the traffic light belongs now. All right. Whidden's Farm, circa 1850. Okay, this is where Sweetwood Circle is today. It burns in 1899. They build a new home. George Fletcher's grandmother was Etta H. Whidden. She lived from 1864 to 1921. This was probably the H.E. Fletcher boarding house. They also had a greenhouse business there around 1910. The water department, the Whidden Water Department, supplied to homes along Whidden's Corner. So some of those older homes you see in and around on Route 40 were supplied by the Whidden Water Company. And then there was the Ship Restaurant, okay? The Ship Restaurant. A few others, moving right along. Chamberlain Corner through Blacksmith Shops, once again, before the coming of the automobile, Blacksmith Shops were important. Marshall's Hall. At 43 to 45 Nabnasset Street, it burnt down in 1922. This, they held community events here, dances. On the bottom floor, there was a grocery store and you know, a general market. We could go and probably buy shovels and picks and things such as that. I would compare it to what you saw in Graniteville, where the hardware store was. Up over that, the Grange met there at one time. There was they used to hold plays. So Marshall's Hall was used the same way, okay? Just Jonas Road a little before that, the tomb of Isaac Keys, or Kais, Jonas and Josh Keys, 1792 to 1850, were all first settlers of Westford. The tomb was built in 1821, and that's still there on Jonas Road. I don't know how many people knew that. Stores, 19, this is on Brookside Road. This is what the house looks like today, okay? From 1911, it was Smith's store. This is probably the one Buffalo Bill went into. From 1915 to 1946, it was run by the Donnelly family. 1920, Donnelly family opened the store and the post office there at the urging of the Abbott Worsted Company, so they wouldn't have to go over to West Chepstow to get it. Miss Donnelly, Mary Donnelly, is the first postmistress from 1920 to 1932, and then from 1946 to 1952, it was the Betancourt Store. And you know these villages, Graniteville, I grew up in Graniteville, and you could go out and there was 4 or 5 little stores like this, Parents Market, George Reeves's, the Holmeses had one. Around the corner there was a candy shop, you know, there was a fish place up the street. All of these villages had much the same thing. Next one, T. All right, the McLeod Store, Esso service station. A lot of these stores, okay, like the McLeods, sold gasoline and gasoline pumps. They're all torn down today. I just wonder if the tanks are still there. But here's a picture of the store. In the late 1930s, the far left was the Brookside Fire Hose Company house. Nabnasset does not get its fire company until 1955. And here's a picture of John McLeod and his dog Rex in front of the General Merchandise Office store. Okay, this is more in the 1940s. Nabnasset Honor Roll from World War II. The Nabnasset Honor Roll, this is Edmund McLeod, and this was displayed in the post office at the MacLeod Store, which was the post office. Okay, here is from a 1950, at least it says 1950. I don't know if you remember Vinnie Popolizio, any of you? Popolizio, that's Vinnie right there. Okay, and it's the honor roll, and the honor roll is still is in possession of the Westford Museum today, and unfortunately some of the names have been lost off of it. John and Edna McLeod, the post office, 01861 until 1958. Edna McLeod's the postmaster from 1932 to 65, and here's the McLeod house today. It used to be the post office. All right, Brookside Mill homes, like Graniteville, like Forge Village, the Moore Company come in and they built homes, okay? 5 Moore Road, this house still exists today, 41 Brookside Road. The next one, you get to get a better idea. All of these houses, very similar, all built during the 1890s. Here's what one of them looked like individually. All right. The Westford Wardsman reports in 1907 that you're beginning to get an influx of quarry workers, Italian quarry workers and railroad workers, and Swedes. The Lundberg family contributed this. It shows Frank Berto's house. Frank Berto, 1880, was a mason. Had built this house. There are a couple of other houses. There's one just down by where Ace Hardware is. I don't know if the house is still there. A little further up at the end of Forest Road, a similar house. Okay, so he said there were quarry workers. Herbert E. Fletcher starts the quarry in 1881. There's a picture of the stone quarry around 1896. Fletcher Quarry Workers, 1916 photo. Charles E. Edwards, third from the left. Charles S. Edwards, sixth from the left. Okay, that'd be him here. Herbert Fletcher builds this house, 1910, 1911, with his new bride. She hears the quarry and says, "We're not living here." And they moved into Chepstow. He becomes a senator for the area, actually. And here's a quarry train from 1992. Fletcher home today, it's quite a building. And one of our days that Rich and I were out researching, we happened to pull into the quarry and there was workers in there. So we got to tour the place and get to see. I'm telling you, the amount of money that was put into a building like this back then, and you know, it's all marble, all stone like that. It's really, really quite a business. Okay? The Swedes came in, and one of them was the Lundbergs. The A.G. Lundberg had leased a location near the Brookside Depot and opened a monument business. They were forced to move when Abbott bought that area, and they actually moved up onto Chamberlain Road. If you were at the end of Brookside and headed up Chamberlain Road, on the right-hand side of the road, there's a wooded area, and there's a bunch of old gravestones in it. A bunch of old gravestones in that area. We went up and looked, and this is just a sample of one of them. A calendar from 1926. Axel Lundberg, who was the official collector of the Brookside area for the Halifax Fund. Halifax Fund, the Halifax was a ship that in 1917 or 1918 blew up in Nova Scotia, and people from Boston sent it up all kinds of contributions, and they sent a Christmas tree to us every year. So, okay. And Stony Brook Fishing Club was established in 1934. There's a 75 photo. William Edwards of Nabnasset sold it to them for $1. So you can tell he was appreciative. And there's Casa Kelly on Route 40. A lot of stories in this place too, but we're not telling it here tonight. Move on, move on. Abbott buys the mills in 1919. He sells it to the Nabnasset Realty Company in 1944. Royal Shawcross, the trustee, establishes the Nabnasset Food Locker Company. But the Abbotts are here for that period of 44 years, and they do some things. Next one. They open, for example, they build some more homes, one on Coolidge Ave, 5 and 7 Coolidge Ave, okay? Much like the company-owned apartments that you saw being built in Graniteville and Forge Village, the Abbotts did the same here. And then they built the Abbott Hall, which we know today as the Fletcher Social and Athletic Club. The inside, they had plays, they had movies, there was a kitchen in the back, and it's been used, for example, when the American Legion first started here in Nabnasset. They used this as their gathering place until they bought the building down on Dunstable Road. Dances were held here. The H.E. Social Fletcher Club held teen dances in the 50s and the 60s and into the 70s. Tuesdays during the summer, and then Fridays during the week. Okay, the Abbott Water Company. Nabnasset opened December 12th. How many people remember that? Joe, when do you think they tore it down? 1978. I got it right from one of the guys in the water department. I don't know how accurate he was, but he said it was 1978. Now ready for service. The quality of water pronounced in state testing for good. But all of us remember that. It was and it was the Abbott Water Company that established it. Next one. The Nabnasset Food Locker Company. Royal Shawcross buys it, and he opens a food locker. And just some of the things, here's some of the ads. These ads came from the Hilda Bosworth collection, which is on the second floor of the J.V. Fletcher Library. And we went in and we went through all the ones from 1932 to 1962, and it was a lot of fun. Smoking and curing, attention, food for, and I remember, if you were from Nabnasset, I'm sure you remember the Shawcrosses. And then the house that I showed you earlier that George R. Moore moved into was where the Shawcross lived. In 1958, I remember visiting with one of the Shawcross kids, and he took me inside the food locker. And I'd never seen so many apples in all my life. There was just bins and bins of apples. So, yep, food locker. Next one. Then it became Commodore Foods from the 1860s to the 1880s. Hired I know some of the guys and some of the women in high school were working there during the second shift, just like some of us worked at Murray Printing. Next one. It became condos, Brookside Mill condos, established in 2003. Okay. And then Brookside Village, Commodore Way, 2015 photos. Okay, stop here. We're going to take a break. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. You want to get downstairs and get a drink, we'll break for about 10 minutes. There's cookies over here. 130 of them, so get a line. All right, part one of this centered around the Brookside area, the historic district. Part two actually centers around the lake area. Okay, let's begin with Nabnasset Lake and what was known as Nabnasset Grove, which existed from 1859 to 1935. It was a picnic area, summer resort at Nabnasset Lake in Westford. The Grove was established by Captain Oliver Wallace Woodward of Nabnasset with about 18 of his friends from Lowell. Captain Woodward owned his 139 acres, a farm and grove that bordered all the eastern shore and half of the northern shore of Nabnasset Lake. And you can see that's 1910, and that house is going to become more familiar, and here it is, 2015, okay? There was a grove for picnics and a pond for swimming, as well as a large dock for patrons and an area with boats and pleasure and fishing. These stereo views are thought to be some of the older ones because of the rowboats and the style of the stereo views. And I think this says Nabnasset Lake, first of Nabnasset Lake as well, okay? And they're probably around 1870, 1880. Captain Woodward would accommodate your group for an hour or for a day. Many businesses, churches, and organizations from Lowell and the surrounding communities would hold their functions at this grove. By 1870, Nabnasset Grove had added croquet, archery, a dining hall, you can see that on this side here, dining hall, and dancing. There was a large field for sports, fun and games, as well as military encampments. Troop F from Westford Center, that also came down and did many of their drills in that area, okay? Nabnasset Farm and Grove, Woodward Farm was purchased by George Seymour in 1874 at the intersection of Nabnasset Street and Oak Road. Once again, here's Nabnasset Street. Okay, this would be where the sign today says the Nabnasset Country Club, and this is the farm probably in the 1880s. He began to, in March of 1874, George Seymour of North Chelmsford, born in Westford and educated in the Westford schools, purchased the Woodward Farm and Grove. He wanted the water rights of Nabnasset Lake for his mills in North Chelmsford. Mr. Moore operated this farm for profit. He hired a farm superintendent who lived and worked at the farm. Remember, Mr. Moore lived himself in North Chelmsford. He continued to operate the resort as a recreational and holiday destination, increasing public awareness of the Grove through newspaper advertisements like this one, okay, from the 1876 Lowell Courier, making it a popular destination for many businesses, churches, schools, and organizations. In 1876, in addition to the buildings already there, George C. Moore builds two 35 by 70-foot halls at the lake, one for dancing and the other for dining. Mr. Moore installs a water gate at the foundation to bring the boats directly into the buildings. Okay? Now, you can see this, and this is going to change. You're going to see a later picture with some changes because you can see the stakes going into the water. Moore purchased 6 additional Whitehall combination row and sailboats at this time and keeps an experienced boatman near the farmhouse. In the right photo, Moore's farm and barn are renovated. Okay, you can see it's much more updated. There's the road, same thing, Nabnasset Street. It has the second floor, and the barn is renovated into a stable that can accommodate up to 50 horses. Nabnasset Grove patrons would arrive by horse carriage, train, or trolley. Many people arrived at the West Westford Station, okay, located on School Street. They would board a horse-drawn barge, all right, sent by Mr. Moore, which brought them to the lake and the grove. Train passengers could also get off at the Brookside Station and walk. After the trolley lines were constructed in 1907, people could take the trolley and get off at Nabnasset Center or at Groton Road. Because of the trolleys, there was talk of making Nabnasset Grove into an excellent park and resort, but lacked adequate access. Many a trolley line directly there would have made the fate of Nabnasset Lake very different. Now, Whalum Park, okay, Paragon Park, Canopy Lake Park, these are what they called trolley parks. And the trolley parks were built in the late 1800s and the early 1900s for the purpose of how are we going to get patrons to take these trolleys on the weekends? You know, they drive back and forth to work during the week, but the weekends. So they began to build these amusement parks along these trolley lines. Okay? What if Nabnasset had become Nabnasset, you know, like Whalum Park or something like that? How might the fate of Nabnasset in the area have been different than what it is today? You know? I mean, you can see, you know, if you go to Lundberg, how many people have been to Whalum Park when it was there? Okay? But it never did. It just, they did not have quite the access to that the others had. Okay. Nabnasset Grove at Nabnasset Lake. On the left side, we see a stereo view of a rowboat and a paddle boat in the area where the dining and dance halls were located in 1879. Mr. Moore had a steamboat he called Clifford. Okay, named Clifford. I think his nephew was named Clifford. George Moore's middle name was Clifford as well. He also had a nephew named Clifford, his brother Edward's son. The steamboat was used for cruises and to pull several rowboats filled with patrons around the lake. Between 1899 to 1900, George Moore purchases several hundred acres of forest preserve, parklands along Nabnasset Pond, which he adds to Nabnasset Grove. This enabled long hiking, riding trails for the resort. The photo on the left, okay, is taken from the hill above Lower Road, showing Camp Nabnasset and Nabnasset Grove around 1923. The photo on the right is taken from the very end of Enmore Road over the Shipley Swamp. Nabnasset Dam and Canal. George C. Moore builds a new granite dam in 1908. And you see the dam spillway rebuilt in 1991. Okay? He lowers 6 feet and rebuilds with granite the canal. He does this it was built and rebuilt in 1911. Remember you had the picture of the stakes in the water? Now they fill that in, and around the same time is when these walls were built. Okay? And if you can see, they've been rebuilt. Here's some of the old stone, here's some of the new stone here. Home on Bird Ave, former location of the Nabnasset Grove buildings. This was the boathouse where recreation would take place, dance halls, kitchen, and all of that was in there, cafeteria. Next one. All right, Nabnasset Pond Farm and Grove owners. Bessie Linda Moore Griffin inherits the farm and grove in 1920. She's the daughter of George C. Moore Sr. George C. Moore Jr. is busy with his business in Chelmsford, mainly because he's already sold the Abbott Mill, the mill to Abbott in 1919. So Bessie takes it. Bessie Moore, here she is in a horse-drawn cart, 1900, around the Nabnasset Pond. She dies in 1923, and Elizabeth Moore Griffin Ness inherits the farm and grove in 1923. She lives in New York. She's the granddaughter of George C. Moore Sr., and she really doesn't have much interest in what's going on there. There's someone running the place for her. Apparently someone comes across with an offer. That would be the next photo. Okay. Oh, and one of the last events there was under the ownership now of William and Ernest Schulzemeyer. The monster outing 1935, The Sons of Italy. Photo courtesy of the Bergamini family. In the front row, next to the tuba, this would be Grandfather Augustino, Uncle Vic, and Father Angelo Bergamini. And those of us who grew up in Graniteville certainly remember Angelo as he left the foundry completely covered in dust at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and was playing at a wedding at 8 o'clock that night with a nice white shirt and his beard. So, quite a guy. What is it? What's a monster outing today, or what was it back then? I don't know. They just a big crowd of people. It's a monster outing. Let's face it, you get that many Italians together, it's got to be a monster outing. Where's Joe LaPiana? Right, Joe? Okay, that's what I thought. A lot of stories like the ones in the Caliente, which we won't tell. Let's go. Camp Nabnasset, located and owned by Charles E. Edwards. Camp Nabnasset now. Okay? Camp Nabnasset, this is the old Edwards house. As they say, just as George E. Moore. And you can see the tree in front says YMCA Camp Nabnasset. In 1908, on the land of Charles E. Edwards on Nabnasset Lake, remember when I showed you the land, I showed you the darkened areas, and I said, remember this as the Edwards land? Okay? This is where the Lowell YMCA opens Camp Nabnasset for summer months. The camp was located on what is now Edwards Beach. Okay, the YMCA Lodge is the first of two main buildings here. YMCA Lodge is the first of two main buildings at the lake. If you look on the roof, you can see the letters YMCA, excuse me. There are boats, canoes, a large dock, and quite the slide. All right? Campers and the counselors slept in tents. At this time, the Edwards' land extended from Nabnasset Lake all the way to Plain Road, okay, Williams Ave today. In 1913, new bungalow building was built. Okay, you can see it here, new bungalow building. Dining hall, there was a large rustic fireplace. The bungalow also serves as a chapel, and to attend in camp in 1914 it cost you $4 a week. Some activities at Nabnasset, Lake Camp Nabnasset, next one, included fishing, boating, swimming, diving, life-saving instructions. The Lowell Courier newspaper in 1915 had a front page article showing these activities. All right, there's someone dressed up in a cowboy uniform, of course. And one of these photos, that was the picture of the cowboy, was Red Fox, famous cowboy character back then. Red Fox James, a Native American giving a demonstration with the lariat. Other activities were tennis and, of course, horseback riding, 1923. And once again, if you look over where the used car dealership is right up the street here, that area there was where the stables were. They had up to 50 horses at one time. Archery and rifle instructions were done at the camp of Henry Fletcher on Lakeshore Drive North, where Bob Lacombe's house now is today. In the photo on the right, the director, T.R. Williams, is conducting Bible studies. In the rear of this photo is the function halls of Nabnasset Grove. Okay, so this was separate. The YMCA camp was separate from Nabnasset Grove. 1928, photo shows the boys at Camp Nabnasset gathered at one of the fields. Note that some of the boys have Camp Nabnasset, Camp N on their sweaters. Okay, Ray Bucknam is here in his Westford sweater. This is property of Marty Spaulding of North Chelmsford, who gave us this. Next one. Camp Nabnasset closes in 1939. The following year, Charles E. Edwards divides the land into 18 lots for sale, known as Nashoba Park. The lots were not sold and the land was left to nature. In 1953, Charles Edwards dies, leaving his grandson, Sumner Edwards, the land at the lake. Okay? He never sold these. Sumner Edwards starts clearing the land in 1952. All right? Some of you who grew up here in NAB certainly remember Sumner Edwards. Okay, I remember Mr. Edwards dressed up in his khakis all the time. You get on the beach, he'd say, boys, if you want to play cards, go over to the side where the picnic tables were in the woods. But he was really good. He was good to the kids, particularly. I remember that. And this is his wife, Grace, removing tree roots from the beach. Very quick story about this as well. While this is going on, the town was in the process in 1953 of possibly taking this for eminent domain. Okay, eminent domain for a town beach. And the residents of Nabnasset rallied. The vote was like 106 to 16 or something like that. Went to town meeting and said, you're not taking it by eminent domain. So the NAB people stuck together. And just here's some pictures. Edwards Beach, looking at the Nabnasset Improvement Association, Mary Lou's Beach, still exists here today and used by Nabnasset residents. I might add too, the NAB Improvement Association, 1938. And we talk about community groups like the Forge Village Improvement Association, Graniteville Pride, all of those groups over the years. One of the first here in NAB and the longest standing one, 80 years. Something to be very proud of. Okay? Some of you might remember this at Edwards Beach. There you go. This is it. The original stand. Okay? Here's one from 1955. You can tell by the old automobiles. Yeah. Okay. Overhang is added in 1956. And then a Coca-Cola sign added in 1959, and this is a 1961 photo. Here's another one from 57. Geez, I mean, you know, some of those people, I don't know who they are, but I imagine if we could zoom in, you'd recognize some. And this was something used a lot by the Nabnasset residents, I might add. Okay. Grace and Sumner Edwards with a small child in 1958, and another one, some beachgoers in 1961. Okay. Town of Edwards purchases Edwards Beach finally. The Edwardses get out of the business, and it becomes Edwards Beach, owned by the town, starting in 1980, and has been, I know that the town runs summer camps down here, as part of the recreation department summer program. Kids here swim and other stuff, so, okay. Lakeshore Drives, Realty Company. All of this land from Nabnasset Grove is bought up by the Schulzemeyers, and they developed the Lakeshore Realty Company, consisting of the Nabnasset Lake Shores, Lakeshore Theater, the NAB Country Club, and the Nabnasset Inn. First, let's take a look at the Lakeshore Drives, okay? A couple of advertisements. Lowell Sun, 1933. Nabnasset Lake comes into its own. For $89, you can buy a lot of land, 25 by 100. In 1935, the Lowell Sun gets involved. Sun Summer Colony. $89, $10 down, $1 a week, and a 6-month subscription to the Lowell Sun. I'm not kidding. Okay, don't delay, act at once. Of course, no one's working in 1935, so, you know, but here's a couple of the advertisements, okay? That's what they, all right. The Schulzemeyers begin dividing this up. This is Gasset Road, Oak Hill Road, Lakeshore Drive. Dave Brody, your house is going to be in this area someplace, right? Yeah. Okay. Look at how small the lots were. Of course, they didn't sell them all, and when they did sell some, they sold 3 or 4 of them at once, and they were put in that way. Okay. Next one. Here's another one showing Sandy Beach in 1934, and these would be Maple Road, Birch Road. Okay. Look how they're all, how divided up they are. All right, here's Nab Lake here. All right, and here's Plain Road up here. How small the lots were. Next one. Okay. Store next to the Sandy Beach, NAB Association, incorporated in 1938. This home was a store and apartment in days gone by. Photo in Tucson. Some of you who grew up in Nab might remember this store. Yep. Okay.
Penny Candy.
Penny Candy, yeah. Nabnasset Lake, Westford. Store and stand, an efficiency apartment, full bath, hot and cold water. Okay? $500 for the log season. This is the only store and stand permitted at this lake. Your chance to enjoy the summer at a beautiful lake and make some money. This is Knoll, Elm Road, Nabnasset. And this is what some of the camps look like. Oak Hill Road. As you can see, there were summer camps. This map was created by Melvin Wilson, who is the father of Melva Shepherd. Okay? Melva Shepherd is married to Sandy Shepherd. Some of you know Sandy. And they had a place on Elm Road. Now, you can't see it too well, but this is up on display at the museum once again. And these houses, you can see they're fairly well by 1942. Along the lake, the land's been bought, but not much has been bought in this area here. Okay? Or over here, or any of these areas. Here's the NAB Country Club, building it back. Okay? That's the NAB. All right, next one. Lakeshore Theater, which was also part of the Schosselmeyer, was located at the junction of Nabnasset and Oak Hill Roads from 1934 to 1941. Here it is. Here's the clubhouse. Here's the riding studio, riding academy. Okay, you can see the riding academy, the clubhouse. This is Nabnasset Street. They've also divided up the land for sale. Okay. Training school for professional theater, unique venture in Westford. They converted the barn into a theater upstairs, and downstairs was recreation, billiards, bowling, pool tables. This house was located in the center of town, where the Northern Bank is located today, and the residents, the people who came and stayed here at this. A. Franklin Trask, who ran the Lakeshore Theater, was the Frost School principal in 1930. And that is Mr. Trask. This was his first year out of school. He then moved from Westford, went to Connecticut, and he came back in 1934 to run the Lakeshore Theater. And we turned it over. Virginia Berto, just to give you some of the names, Perkins, a couple more Berettos, Priscilla Gregg, Mickey. I'm sure if you come up and look, you'd see some of the names you recognize here. Robert Hildreth, okay? This has been the 8th grade class in 1930. And this is in front of the Cambridge School, okay? Here's the Lakeshore Theater, a picture of it in 1935. Just to let you know, this was part of a larger movement called the Little Theater Movement all throughout the United States. And what they did was these theaters were set up and they trained. They brought in people and trained them for acting. And this one was popular because of its location. You had access with a train, you have access by trolley, the roads would be automobiles. So it was an ideal location. And also, the land was for sale at the time. So Schosselmeyer decided to develop it into that. Not only was it a school where they had 70 or 80 students from all around the country that came to train here, but they also had some big name actors come in as well. Okay. This mural now stands at the Westford Museum. I got to give you the story behind this. Golfing a couple years ago, and I was probably out in the woods with my friend Paul McMillan, because he was in the woods looking for a ball as well. But I was telling him about we were working on this Nabnasset project, and he said, one of the high school, or women he went to high school with, Terry Rashadi, said, boy, in her basement, she had a bureau of some sort of the NAB Country Club. I said, really? So Terry lives over on Chamberlain Road, the corner of Chamberlain and Lowell Road. And I got in touch with her. I says, is that in your basement? She says, down there someplace. So last fall, or last summer, we picked up Terry, went over to her mother's, who was 102 years old, by the way, and went into the basement, and sure enough, there it was. In the back of bookcases, and timber, heavy equipment machine, I don't know. There was all, so after about an hour and a half, we were able to free it, bring it up. Richie took it over next door to where he lives. He dressed it all up, and that's what it looks like now, okay? I don't know what the value of it is, but what they did was, in the bottom area, there was a local artist who put these murals up all around. There was a marine scene, but probably 7 to 8 of them all around, and this was probably one. How they ended up with it, I don't know, okay? But Terry, she said, we have no use for it, and so now it's hanging up at the Westford Museum. It's really quite a piece. It's nice. And like I said, once again, Richie did a great job of cleaning it up and putting a frame around it and all of that. Yeah, once again, actress Miriam Marmion, August 7th, 1934. So they had big name actors. Ethel Barrymore's daughter, I guess. Ethel Barrymore's daughter was in there. Okay, just to name you a few. Next one. Here's the Lakeshore Theater patrons at Lakeshore Realty Office. This realty office, you can see it in this picture here. That's the Lakeshore office. That would have been on Nabnasset Street, right up the street. This is probably the patrons leaving a play in the afternoon. The upstairs of that theater held 1,000 people, okay? So it wasn't, you know, hey, this little small thing. You think of the Performing Arts Center at the Westford Academy, that holds 900, I guess. It's 1,000 people, okay? Okay, show some ISLs to a group in the Nabnasset Country Club Board of Directors, and they open a 9-hole course, which you could get on weekdays, 50 cents for one round, 75 cents for the day. Saturdays and Sundays, 75 for one round, and $1.25 for the day. And it becomes a NAB Country Club. Okay? And once again, Vinnie Popolizio. This is a photo of him in a Memorial Day parade around 1950. George Fletcher, before he passed on, Richie had talked to him about this building, and he said he believed that they tore this building down, didn't burn it or anything like that, but it was moved over, and it's now a barn over in Chelmsford. Oh, wow. If Richie was here, he could tell us where it was. But Memorial Day parade, okay? Over Riverneck Road? Off of Riverneck Road, okay. Okay, next one. That's a postcard for the late 1950s. Okay, you can see that's a 1955 or 56 Ford station wagon. 5-alarm fire levels at the Westford Country Club. Okay, this is the building. When we showed you the main building, this was the building in the back. All right, this is the building in the back. Yep, right here where this one is located. The fire was in March of 1977. $100,000 in damages, injuring 2 Westford firefighters, Ed McLeod, Joseph Jolin, and treated and released. 8 employees, according to the Westford Fire Escape Safety Club, shortly before midnight fire. Most of us remember that fire. Okay. Okay, this is where the McLaughlins live today. Okay. The Nabnasset Inn, 1934 to 1935, previously known as the Nabnasset Pond Farm. With the country club, okay, in the theater, the Nabnasset Inn opened serving dinner daily, catering to banquets and parties, right? And it was all part of this Nabnasset Pond Farm. Photo shows the dining room and the tennis courts in 1938, and Vino being offered at Nabnasset Inn, Thursday, October 10th at 7:30. All are welcome. Halloween party in 1940. Nabnasset Associates Incorporated, 3 miles from North Chelmsford. And then it goes up for sale in 1942. Beautiful inn overnight cabins can be used as home, high-class rooming house. Next one. And here is the ad for the sale of a whopping price of $8,900 in 1946. And this is when the Yarnell family buys it. Yarnell family. Next one. And Rusty Yarnell, our first of 3 major leaguers from Westford. Okay? Rusty graduated from the University of Vermont. He was an all-state there. He played for the Philadelphia Phillies in 1926. He pitched 1 inning of Major League Baseball. He then went on to Lowell Tech and had the first undefeated football team there in 1928 when Lowell Tech had a football team, and he was entered into the Vermont Hall of Fame, and this is the cartoon from the Lowell Sun in 1971. William Ward Yarnell. Jane's dad, okay? There's quite a history here, the impact they had in the town, because Jane's son happens to be Robert Walker, who's sitting right here. Okay, and if you know Robert, Cornerstone Square, if you've gone down to Burton's, he's the guy who sent us down there, so he's done a great job. Now, I put this picture, I'm kind of going to go back and forth. This quadrangle picture shows you Nabnasset in 1946. See how congested it is? Go to the next one, TJ. Okay? Because you did not have, at the time, that's Newport Drive. Here are your Birch Road, Maple Street, and all of those, how well filled in that is. Okay? Here's the school, but you did not have Hawthorne Ave, Myrtle Ave, all of these. You did not have Lucille, okay? Lucille Ave at the time. Okay, and what was the other one called? Lucille and Lillian. Named after your mother, yeah. Because the Yarnells, when they sold the house in 1956, moved down onto Moore Road, and Lillian Road was built, and it was named after Jane's mom. Okay? But yeah, that gives you, here's something. Aberwiston, 1949. These are just plot plans showing you, here's Plain Road, Aberwiston starts selling off the land. Edith May Bridgeford is Hawthorne Avenue, Plain Road, okay? Laurel Avenue, okay? This is town of Westford. This is the land they own with the school. Okay, next one, T. It also shows Myrtle, Hawthorne, Laurel Aves, okay? Edith May Bridgeford is the owner of these. She doesn't do the building, though. Anderson's electric sawmill, 1949. It was located between Myrtle Ave and Grove Street. And what they were probably doing is they were clearing the land to build the houses using this sawmill. Lewis Craft, okay? In 1955, he builds Lillian, Lucille, okay? And this is the plot plan for that. And then the Bayless Nabnasset Plaza in 1960, the Nabnasset Business Center. And here's the plans for that. And here is your second major leaguer, Mike Bayless, a pitcher for the Boston Bees, who were better known as the Boston Braves. In 1938, he pitched 1 inning as well for the Boston Bees. Okay? Those are the 2 majors. The third major leaguer was Noella LeDuc from Graniteville, who played in the women's Major League Baseball team for the movie, you know, A League of Our Own. Yeah, yeah. And she was, she played many seasons there as well, okay? Yes, some of these familiar, Nabnasset Motor. Pete Morrow's place at the corner of Oak Hill. Yeah, Pete Morrow lived right on Nabnasset Street. Okay, there's a NAB pharmacy, okay, opened by the, established in 1960. George Danny and Mike Eliopoulos sold it in 1986 and moved on, built Market Basket up on Route 110. Interesting, the United States Post Office moves to its present location. I want to read you, this is the dedication The dedication of the new Nabnasset Post Office took place with approximately 400 persons. Residents of Nabnasset, townspeople invited guests attending the celebration. It formed at the Nabnasset School at 1:30, marched to the center of Nab, past the former post office, and marched to the new building. And here it is. Well, so we looked it up. TJ went to Google, looked it up. It was a Thursday afternoon, 400 people on a Thursday afternoon, but it was also during school vacation. So, next picture. And here's the picture of the dedication parade. Okay? If you were a Cub Scout, you might be in that picture. All right, some other roads, Woodbine, Wilkshire, York roads. Here's the plot plans. Salem Road and Newport Drive, 1962. Of course, Stratton Hill was built by David Moulton in 1967. Here's the plot plan. And Greystone, built by Butchie Trawick in 1997. Education during the period, the Wooden Corner Schoolhouse at Groton Road, the school in the middle 1800s. In 1985, this building, which had been converted to a home, was sold to the Shell Rapid Gas and Rapid Refill service store. And the house was, I think, torn down. Then there was Mrs. Blodgett's on Lawn Sought-For School, number 8 on Teddy Road. And that was moved to Gould Pickings Farm when it was used to store different materials in there. And the building's still there today, as a matter of fact. Next one. Nabnasset School number 7, 73 Oak Hill Road, sold in 1916 to George C. Moore and converted to a home. Stony Brook Schoolhouse number 2 on Stony Brook Road from 1870 to 1990. 1909, sold in 1914 to William Taylor. Okay? Is the NAB school built in 1922, land taken by eminent domain from Charles E. Edwards, and that was the old Nabnasset school. And it's interesting, a carnival. They hold a carnival every year here on the grounds. Okay? 1963. Okay? The field itself was dedicated August 10th, 1985 at the old Nabnasset School after United States Air Force Captain Stephen Hamilton, who was a 1973 WA graduate and a Green Beret. Okay. The new Nabnasset School opened in 1960, and here's a picture here of the Boy Scouts enjoying the campsite at what was known as Sandy Plains. Okay, for those of you from Nabnasset who grew up in town would know the area as Sandy Plains because it was sandy, the area. Yeah. Yeah. But this is the Boy Scouts in 1941. Let's just to give you an idea, you saw how quickly Nabnasset was growing, okay? You saw how quickly Nabnasset was growing during that period. I was at the Sergeant School, and when the third graders from Nabnasset couldn't go to the old Nabnasset School, they shipped them to Graniteville, and they were all housed in the American Legion back there. So they brought the NAB kids in, they just wouldn't integrate them with the Graniteville kids for whatever reason. I'm telling you. They had them. School choice, yes. But they had them in the Legion. After a couple of years, they started integrating. A lot of them come in there after that. So. But I always found that interesting that they just kind of shipped them over and, okay, get in this building here.
What year?
That would have been, third grade, I would have been 1957. And it wasn't just that, they actually closed the building that they built in 1922 for a while during the Second World War and shipped everybody up to the Frost School, okay? And I'm sure it was to save money and time. Okay. We just found this one to be interesting. 2 years after Prohibition ends, federal agents raid the barn, 50,000 gallons of mash. And I was hoping Marcel Lacombe would be here because this is his house. Yeah, this is what would have been his house, yeah. And just a couple of advertisements as we were going through the old Lowell Suns. Brookside Drive-In, which we knew affectionately as Fran's because Fran ran it. Fran Levine who lived in the house next door. Chuck's Gun Shop, your one-stop service, Nabnasset Motor Service, NAB Sitco, Chet's Barbershop. Every kid in Nabnasset got their hair cut there. Next one, okay? Commodore Foods, Lakeshore Arms, Edwards Beach, Sheback's Flower Shop, and this is the one I posed for. Those that know me knew that I worked 4 years in the back of Bob Legacy's rubbish truck. It says, speed up, he's gaining on us, and that was probably Gary, Bob's son, training me for the position. But yeah, Bob, that was before Tom White pickup. He had a route, and there was another gentleman by the name of Sylvian that had a route in town also. Okay, a few more. Dance at Fletcher Hall, Nabnasset. Of course, you know, we remember the dances from the 60s. They had them Friday nights and Tuesday nights during the week. Okay, that pharmacy, construction equipment show on the Stony Brook Fishing Game, October 2nd, 1960. C. Johnny's Greenlaw for fencing. Here's the one that got us. Halloween party and dance at Felix's Inn, Plain Road. And it was said, Felix's Inn, from other ads, it was a half mile from the Westford Depot if you went up Plain Road. And we had no one that ever heard of it. You know, I talked to a few people, even Bill Olson's mom, the superintendent, Bill Olson's mom, was a Merino. And she is, I think, just turned 97 or something like that. So I stopped at Bill's and he said, well, I'll try to call her, and she's hard of hearing. Ma! And so he was on the phone with her, and she hadn't ever heard of Felix's Inn either. So, Bob, I don't know, you never found any information on it, and Bob Oliphant does extensive research. So, and it was only around for about a year, but it seems like it must have been a barn where they opened it up and had big parties and things such as that. And it only cost 25 cents.
And you could win a 12-pound turkey.
And you could win a 12-pound turkey, right. Okay. And with that, we want to thank you for coming. Please visit and support the Westford Museum and Historical Society, open Sundays 2 to 4. Thank you.